Canada is known for a lot of things. And even more embarrassing things like but if you sell on Amazon, Canada is easily one of the best, lowest risk ways to expand and scale your Amazon business. When we launched in Amazon last year, we scaled to over $338,000 in revenue. And I gotta say, it was some of the easiest revenue I've ever generated in the Amazon game. You use the same proven SKUs sold in other marketplaces, so the risk is really minimal. It's very similar operationally. It's the same customer type, and frankly, it's just the easiest way to grow. This video is no BS. I'm gonna break down the exact playbook on how you can launch in Canada literally today. This is gonna be the most comprehensive, deep dive, step-by-step, over-the-shoulder approach to scaling into Amazon Canada. It's free and you won't find it anywhere else. Let's get after it. All right, guys, so we're gonna dive right into this one. My name is Adam and I've scaled physical products omni-channel brands to over 9 figures. But most importantly, I wanted to leave my corporate gig behind, and I've since launched multiple 7-figure Amazon businesses and brands, even exiting one of them. And I've done about everything right and wrong that you can do in the Amazon game, and I've got the scars to prove it. But I gotta say, this video today is gonna break down one of the easiest ways to generate revenue, profit, and scale your Amazon business, and that's expanding into Amazon Canada. Buckle in on this one because we're gonna move fast and literally just break down every single thing that you need to know, my exact playbook for expansion into Canada. And this is literally the video that I wish I had 18 months ago when we first started on this journey. First, we're gonna talk about why you'd even wanna scale to Canada. We're gonna talk about how to set up your listings, how to test demand, how to navigate Canadian taxes, all about shipping, duties, and logistics into Canada, and finally, how you can launch and set up your pay-per-click campaigns. And if you stay through to the end, there might be a special little treat that you may want as well. So why Canada? It's obviously oftentimes about how to generate growth and profit with an Amazon business. Showed that $338,000 revenue screenshot at the outset. This is an actual inside look into my Sellerize account where we look at profits. And you can see over the last 12 months with our Canadian business, we've generated north of $84,000 in profit. And that's with less than 10% of ad spend, which in the US marketplace is pretty hard to come by. So in addition to just the cash and profits and contribution margin that generates, if you were to take that $84,000 at an exit value of say 3.5 times multiple, that's almost $300,000 in your pocket when you sell your business. But in addition to the numbers, which is obviously the most important, it's frankly the easiest way to get those numbers. We're talking about the same exact listings and products, same customer type because Canada is very similar to the US. The reviews transfer over. You have less competition and less cutthroat foreign competitors. There's less price wars. And because pay-per-click's cheaper and you can get a higher price, your margins are typically a lot higher in Canada. It's very, very, very similar operational setup in terms of managing your SKUs as well as shipping inventory into Canada. And really, I think it's easily the fastest, lowest risk way to actually scale an Amazon business. You know, you can expand into global markets, you can add variations, you can launch new products, or you can launch new sales channels. And out of all of those 4, expanding globally specifically into Canada is about as easy and low risk as it gets. So let's dive into my computer, go over the shoulder. We're gonna get into some step-by-step SOPs that you can literally implement here today to see these results and scale into Canada with your own business. All right, now the fun begins. We're gonna get into the nitty-gritty step-by-step stuff on what you need to do to actually get cracking in Canada. Now, the first thing that we're gonna do is to set up an actual Canadian listing. And there's a lot of reasons why we do this first, and not a lot of people do this, but if you don't do this step, they're gonna default to the global listing. I'm not going to get into all the details, but long story short, it's a pain in the ass to do it that way. This also lets you customize your price and really simply set up your offer and your listing in Canada. So to do this, what you're going to want to do is to click on the top left menu from your Seller Central account. You're going to want to go to Catalog, Add Products, and then it's going to pull up a search bar like this. How I like to do it is literally just to type in your brand name, and then the Amazon catalog is going to find every product associated with your brand name, and you've got all of them. You can just find which ones you want to create a Canadian Canadian listing for and you're off to the races. But alternatively, you can use a UPC number or you can use an ASIN number. Regardless of how you want to search for that, basically once it brings the results up, you're going to find the product that you want to create a Canadian listing for. You're going to select the condition as new, and then that's going to give you a button that comes up which says sell this product. So you just click sell that product, and then it's going to pull up a really simple set of things that you need to pull up. So unlike setting up a product from scratch, which you've got title and regulatory information and all kinds of stuff you need to fill in there, you just need to update the offer settings. Everything else will be the same as your US listing. Now, once you've got this set up, you can edit title and bullets. You can do all that editing after, but this is the quickest, easiest way to get it set up. The first thing that you're going to want to do is to add the contribution SKU. This is not your UPC. This is not your ASIN. This is the actual SKU name that you have in your Amazon US account. It's really critical that you copy this exactly. And the reason is that this is how Amazon's going to identify that it's the same SKU in Canada and the US. And that's what's going to merge your reviews together, which is really powerful when you launch in Canada, because you may have hundreds or thousands of reviews from your US listing that come over. But you've got to use the right contribution SKU. The next thing that you're going to want to do is to, on the fulfillment channel toggle, just select that bottom toggle, Amazon will ship. Because we're setting up an FBA product, that will basically initiate this is an FBA listing. After you've hit that toggle, you just want to throw in a price. You don't need to finalize this yet. You can always edit this after, but generally speaking, what you want to do is account for the exchange rate. So just search for exchange rate on Google, Canada to US, but usually it's about 1.3 times the price of what you would have in the US. But we're going to also look at the competitive dynamics, because you may actually be able to price the product higher than you have in the US simply because it's a less competitive market. But just throw in a placeholder for price. You can update that one later. And then you go to offer conditioning type new, and then you're off to the races. You hit save and finish. And then usually within about 10-15 minutes, you're going to see that new Canadian listing in your catalog. To check that, you can go back to your Seller Central account, go to your inventory, manage all inventory, or manage FBA inventory, and you should be able to see a view of all of the Canadian listings that you have set up. If you see them there, you're good to go. So now we got the listing set up, which we can customize the pricing on, which is really important that we did this first. We can now evaluate demand to figure out, hey, which one of these do we really want to go after for the Canadian market? Now, the quickest, easiest way to kind of check is to do exactly what you do in the US or other marketplaces. We use Helium 10 for this, but just use a software to reverse ASIN and understand what the sales volume is for your category in Canada. So you're going to want to go to amazon.ca, not .com or other markets, because we want to search this for Canada. Type in a keyword that best describes your product or the marquee keyword. So in this case, we just use an example of a golf rangefinder. And then you just click on your Chrome extension. In the case of Helium 10, you're going to look at the X-ray, and then it's going to pull up all of the different competitors on the front page. It's going to show their revenue, their sales, the way that they're priced, etc. So we can see here for the golf rangefinder, there's search volume of 2,100 in Canada. The average revenue is about 15 grand for listings, and the average price is 136. So this will help us, number one, determine the price based on what the competitors are doing and where we think we're going to slot in. It's going to tell us what the actual monthly sales may be. What we found is that the sales in Canada is usually about 5 to 20% of that in the US as a proxy. Every catalog and every product and category is different. We tend to see about 10 to 15%, but you can use this as a check if you've never sold in Canada to see what the volume is. Based on your revenue goals, based on whether it's worth your time to sell in Canada, this will help you determine whether it makes sense to pursue that SKU or not. You know, if it's doing $500 a month, then maybe like, look, I'm not going to send that one into Amazon Canada, it's too low. But there's oftentimes most of your catalog that makes sense to send in, even if it's a fraction of the volume, because it's more profitable, because it's less competitive, etc. You can also, within the Helium 10 thing, look at the 1 year view so you can kind of judge demand. Sometimes it's a little bit different because the seasonality in Canada may be different. So you can check the 1 year trend line just to see where your peak season may be in Canada. So once you've got that demand sussed out, let's say, hey, I'm ready to rock and roll. I want to do something in Canada for that SKU. The thing you should likely do first is to actually use the NARF program, or Amazon's remote fulfillment program. Now, fairly recently, they've activated this automatically for most SKUs. So most of the time you don't need to do anything. In fact, you may already be selling it in Canada via NARF and not know it, but you can find out which SKUs are activated in NARF and which aren't by going to sellercentral.amazon.com/RAFN/inventory. So once you go there, you're going to get to a page like this. All you want to do is generate the report. It takes a couple minutes to process. You can download that as a spreadsheet, save it. What we like to do is just import it into Google Sheets. So we just kind of import the data there. And then you're going to see 3 different tabs at the bottom once you open up that spreadsheet. If you click on the enrollment tab, that's going to be the specifics of your catalog. So it's going to list all of your products. And in column F, it's going to say enable, disable Canada, yes or no. So if the product is already active in NARF, it's going to say yes. You need to do nothing. It's already selling in Canada. If it says no or it's blank, that means it's not in NARF. Now, most of the products within Amazon's catalog, in your catalog, you can actually import in via the NARF program, but some things like wood products, things with batteries, electronics, they may not be included with this program. But if it's a product you want to sell in NARF and it doesn't already have yes, you're going to want to put yes into that, save the file as a spreadsheet, and then you just go back into that Seller Central page, you go to choose file, upload it, and then again, within 10-15 minutes, those offers should be active for NARF. What we tend to do if we're using that as a first step is run it for a month or 2 and just see what kind of sales we're generating. If we're getting a handful of orders a day, it typically makes sense to activate that via Canada FBA and actually send inventory in. So the next step, once you've set up your listing, once you've validated demand, maybe you've turned on NARF for a little bit, you're like, look, I'm ready to rock and roll legit and send physical inventory into Canada. We're going to cover that now. Now, first of all, importing stuff into Canada, they've got something called an HS code, which is very similar to the HTS code in the US. You're typically just going to want to ask your freight forwarder whether or not the HS code is the same as US or not, and they can tell you what that code is. That's going to dictate what your duties may be. Once you have that number, that's the first step. But what you really need to do to send inventory and start selling officially in Canada is to get a GST HST number. Canada has general sales tax. Think of it like VAT in Europe, where they want to take a percentage of the revenue generated in the country and then you owe that as taxes. But you can't do that formally and have a corporate entity unless you've got that GST HST number. So what you're going to want to do is just type RC1 form into Google, go to the Government Canada website. It's going to be a page like this. You can fill that form out online, or you can also fill it out in PDF form and fax it in. It's a detailed form. I'm not going to get into it in this, but it's pretty self-explanatory on filling that thing out. Once you've submitted it, it generally takes about a month or 2 to get your actual number back. But once you have that number, you're actually ready to rock and roll and you're ready to send inventory into Amazon FBA. Now, an important housekeeping thing here from a tax standpoint, just to realize, if you don't do this step that we're going to go into now, Amazon's automatically going to deduct the GST from your payments. Now, this isn't legal or accounting advice. Talk to professionals on this, but generally speaking, you probably don't want to do that. The reason being is that as you have import duties and other fees, when you import products into Canada, you can deduct those costs from the amount of GST, HST that you owe at the end of the year. So it's going to save you a lot more than Amazon doing it automatically. The other benefit is that you actually don't need to pay that tax bill until the very end of the year. So Amazon and all of its bi-monthly payments is going to add that revenue for the GST collected from customers into your account, and you're going to get that on your payouts. So your cash flow can really be improved because you don't have to pay that bill till the end of the year. But you do need to pay the bill at the end of the year. If you don't do it, you could be in trouble with the Canadian government. So you know, in our case where we did 300,000 some odd sales, I think it was like an $8,000 tax bill, something like that. We just needed to allocate that to make sure that we had that money to pay at the end of the year. So to turn off Amazon automatically taking out that GST from your sales and your payouts, you're basically going to want to go into your Amazon Seller Central account in Canada, click on the settings tab, go down to tax settings, and then the first column you're going to see there's a GST HST number. So once you filled out that RC1 form and the Canadian government gets back to you with a number, you're going to want to actually import that number into this form right here, save it, and then Amazon will no longer collect those taxes on your behalf. All right, so for step 5 of the playbook, we're going to get into actually how to ship your inventory in and managing those logistics. The first thing that you're going to need to do once you've decided to actually flip over to FBA and physically send inventory into Canada is you've got to turn off the SKUs in that NARF spreadsheet that you actually are going to be setting up as FBA. Same exact thing, you download that report, and in that column F, all you need to do for the SKUs that you're actually going to activate into Amazon Canada FBA is to just select no instead of yes. That's going to turn them off of the NARF program. For those that you aren't quite ready to send into Amazon yet, if you've got some of those, just keep them as yes, and Amazon will continue to operate with remote fulfillment. Now, one of the drawbacks during this period is between the time of when you actually ship inventory and it's received and available for sale in Canada, you're not going to have NARF sales during that period. So you can expect about 2 to 4 weeks where the NARF listing has been converted to FBA and you're not getting sales for that SKU. But the good news is that fulfilling is the exact same same as the US and other marketplaces. You go to create a fulfillment order for your actual product in Canada, and you can ship it either via UPS SPD or via an LTL truck carrier. Now, one thing you're going to want to do when you set up that fulfillment order is to actually create a new shipping template for that Canadian SKU. All you really need to do, if the master cartons are the same, is to convert it to metrics, so centimeters, millimeters, kilograms, etc., and you're off to the races. Now, at the bottom of your inventory management within Seller Central, you're going to see your inventory limits. One of the drawbacks when you flip over to Amazon FBA is you may have some restrictive limits on your inventory, so you may need to send some partial master cartons initially, but pretty quickly after you get sales, you're going to see that number scale up, and you're going to be able to send in full carton loads and full inventory loads of what you actually want to make available for sale in Canada. Now, the biggest decision that you've got when you actually enter Canada via FBA is whether you want to ship your product from your manufacturer, typically in China, directly to Canada, or whether you want to use the inventory and infrastructure that you've got in the US and ship that inventory into Canada. For that first option, you're basically going to send containers to the Vancouver port in Canada. One of the drawbacks of this is most of the population in Canada is going to be on the East Coast in Ontario and other provinces. So you've got to ship it into BC and then literally truck it all the way across the country into Ontario, where most of the Amazon warehouses and customers are. But the benefit of that is that you have Canadian duties, and oftentimes those are near 0%. So you don't have the Trump tariffs of like 25% and those other punitive tariffs that we've seen in the US market. But typically you're going to need to have a 3PL. You're typically going to have more operational costs on shipping stuff across the country, etc. So what we do is we actually ship our Canadian inventory from our US infrastructure. So all of our orders for both the US and Canada are going to come from China directly into the US. We're going to store them in our 3PL that we have in the US. And then when we need inventory into Canada, we'll either use UPS or an LTL trucking service, truck it over the border, check it into Canada, and get it right into the Canadian distribution centers. Advantages of this are you're using the same pool of inventory and the same ocean freight for both markets. You've got the same logistics infrastructure, and the 3PLs in the US are substantially less expensive than those in Canada. But the drawback is you may have paid 20+% duties to get it in the US, and then you've got to then import it into Canada. There is a process to do duty drawbacks within the US if you ship directly into Canada and don't sell it in the US using the US ACE portal. We're not going to get into that in this video, but that's definitely one of the drawbacks if you don't want to not navigate those duty drawbacks. So for shipping logistics, really simple. Turn off NARF, send an Amazon inventory via FBA. We go from our US batch into Canada, we're off to the races, and then you basically run that channel exactly as you would in the US. Now, the sixth and final part of the playbook is actually launching and getting that sales volume and that sales velocity within your Canadian listing once you get the FBA listing set up. Oftentimes, what's really cool, again, because Canada is less competitive, is you can just do a pay-per-click launch. You can sprinkle in some Google ads, you can sprinkle in some external traffic, other things if you wish, but really all you need to do, in my experience, is set up really good pay-per-click campaigns, optimize your listing like you do in the US, and really manage your pay-per-click and scale from there. To keep this video short, I'm not going to get into exactly how to set all those things up, but you can either set up your pay-per-click campaigns from scratch exactly as you would in the US. Oftentimes, you're just going to target the keywords that you do in the US, or you could do a little bit of keyword research in Canada if you wish, but it's pretty simple. Take those keywords that are working in the US, set up pay-per-click campaigns, and boom, you're done. You can also go into your bulk report if you know flat file systems in the US, and you can create your actual Canadian campaigns from those bulk reports. I think the key thing for Canadian pay-per-click is that the bid amounts, again, because it's a less competitive market, don't need to be as high as in the US. So if you're going to use your US campaigns as a proxy, you're probably going to want to reduce your bid amounts by about 20 to 30%. Then you just hit the gas once that inventory is checked in. You've got all those existing reviews, so your conversion rate should be good. Hammer pay-per-click for 2 to 3 weeks, and then go into maintenance mode and watch your Canadian listings take flight. We found it to be much easier to rank organically in Canada, much easier to get Amazon's choice badges, and a much more efficient pay-per-click spend, which generated those profits that I showed in the screenshot above. Now, while you can absolutely use this video literally today to implement and expand into Canada, there's only so much detail I can go into in a 15 to 20 minute YouTube video. So I've done something pretty unique and special. Actually, the first time I've ever done this is I've created an actual mini course on how to expand into Canada in much more detail. This course takes the core concepts we covered in this actual video, but it breaks it down into 26 deep dive videos. There's 12 step-by-step documented PDF SOPs that you can literally just follow along and implement to expand into Canada. It's got my Rolodex of 5+ resource providers, all of which have offered discounts, so shipping, logistics, imports, getting your filings done, etc., all in one space included in the course. Now that's going to run $297, and I'm supremely confident that's going to be the biggest ROI and payback ever. It's a drop in the bucket for the value that you can unlock when you expand into Canada using the more detailed videos in that course. And if you aren't familiar, I've also got a deep dive mastermind community and 150+ video course called the FBA Blueprint Pro. All of those Canadian modules and videos are included for free as part of that program. So if you've ever thought about joining and want to get that tucked in as part of the broader offering that I've also got an option below to join that community. So check the link in the description, check the pinned comments. Again, you can implement all of this stuff for free if you wish, but if you want to save some time, you want to save some money with the resources provided, you want all the step-by-step SOPs, for under $300, you can get access to that Canada mini course. So that's it, guys. That is the launching in Amazon Canada playbook. Hopefully you found this one valuable and one of the most comprehensive resources and videos on the internet for scaling your Amazon business. But as always, guys, I try to bring as much friggin' value as humanly possible. I hope this video did that for you. I urge you, whether you use this video and do it on your own for free or whether you buy the course, implement Canadian expansion this year. In fact, today, turn this video off, implement these steps. I know that it's going to create a ton of growth and value in your business. It's one of the easiest ways to do it, and hopefully this resource will help get you there. Until next time, guys, thanks as always for stopping by. Cheers.